There are two kinds of arrays in PHP, indexed and associative. Index looks like this. If you want to say, if you want to have a number of files, for instance, index PHP, and also reports PHP, or let's say welcome PHP, then you already have your files there in an array. You can say files1, for instance, and it says reports PHP. Why is it the second one? Because in PHP, arrays start with 0. If we say we want the 0 index, then we get index, like that. You can define this array in another way. If you just say files and then these brackets equals index PHP, like this. Files equals reports PHP and files welcome PHP, like that, you get the same thing. I'll change it just to see the change here. Index 2 is the third file. The third way to define a, let me block this off here with a comment. So the third way to define an indexed array is to specify the actual index numbers, like this. Index PHP. And here you can actually do things like this, because you're giving PHP the actual number. Doesn't matter what order it is. Like that. So let's change this one. It should say reports. And it does. So those are the three ways that you can define an indexed array. To find out how many items you have in your array, you can simply say this. Go count files. Let's put our little thing here. And we see that there are 3. The main thing is to remember that the index starts with 0, so if you have 3 in your array, the highest index is then 3 minus 1, which is 2. There's another kind of array. It's called an associative array, and that works like this. It's associative array. Let's say you're doing an application for ticket ordering and you want to record how many tickets have been ordered for each area in the theater. So you could say number of tickets, orchestra, 23 were sold, number of tickets, balcony, 12 were sold, number of tickets, box, 5 were sold. To show these values, you simply say number of tickets, and then one of them, for instance, is that, so you could say number of tickets in number of box tickets is 5, for instance. And if you want to go through them all, you would do this. For each number of tickets as area, and then this arrow number. So now you have a loop, and inside this loop, you're going to have the key, which is inside these brackets, and the value, which is what you assign to it. So we can make a little sentence here. In the area, there were number tickets sold. So we check that out. There's an error on line 30. Let's see what error that is. We have an extra bracket. So, and here we see that it goes through the associative array, pulling out the key, orchestra, and the value, 23, and doing that for each item. It's very important to remember that the key, this here, must be unique. So it has to be some kind of code, like a code, a unique identifier which refers to orchestra, for instance. What a lot of programmers do and causes confusion is they will say, oh, this is great. What I'm going to try now is to have, for instance, an array where I have a code as in a database, let's say PHP or ASP or JSP, and for each record, I can have that code in the record. Let me give it a little example here. You can say, for instance, tip, PHP is go to php.net. It is a great site. And I have a tip for JSP. Install the Tomcat server. It's a great tip. Now I have another tip for CSS. Get the book CSS Basics, for instance. And then they say, I have another PHP tip. Check out the PHP magazine site. Okay, now I have 4 tips. Let me run through them. For each tip as category and text. And then I want to show them, echo for the category tip. This is for the category. This is the tip, for instance, and then you have the text. So, now what comes out of this? Let's look. 3 tips. We have a PHP tip, a JSP tip, and a CSS tip. Yet I put 4 in my array. What happened? What happened is, since the keys have to be unique, when you put your second tip in for PHP, it replaced this tip. So if you look here, the PHP tip is check out the PHP magazine site. That is the last PHP tip that you put in. So while associative arrays works well for this type of need, where you have a unique key as the key in the array, it does not work well for something that you would probably do more in a database, where this would be in one column and this in another. So that's something to remember about associative arrays, something that almost everybody runs into at one point or another.